They're the world's most vulnerable people, their lives upended by events out of their control. War, persecution, natural disaster. And their numbers worldwide are growing dramatically.
Sadly, we're seeing record numbers of global displacement. We've seen over the last decade the number of forcibly displaced people worldwide double.
Over the past decade, civil war has raged on in Syria, resulting in 13.5 million displacements, the worst affected country in the world. Venezuela's long-running refugee crisis accounts for 4 million of those displaced today. Among other crises highlighted by the UNHCR's Global Trends report, the persecution of Myanmar's Rohingya Muslim minority. 1 million remain in overcrowded camps in neighbouring Bangladesh. While in Africa, ethnic conflict is still widespread. Violence in Ethiopia displaced 1 million people in 2020 alone, while 500,000 fled abduction and massacre in Mozambique. Those displacements just a small sample of a growing global problem.
Conflict is, I guess, the greatest factor forcing people from their homes. But now we're seeing much more complex situations where climate change, urbanisation, poverty, food security are all coming together to really be, I guess you might say, a megastorm where we're seeing these very large numbers of people leaving.
And in the past year, the COVID pandemic has exacerbated and complicated.
You already had communities that were under pressure. You then have COVID. You then put on top of that the isolation and the restriction of economic activity. You have food insecurity and food shortages. And you're going to see an increased number of people moving, which will add and compound and increase conflict.
According to the UNHCR, closed borders have reduced the number of forcibly displaced people seeking refuge overseas by an estimated 1.5 million. Those people now stuck in unsafe situations. For those already in refugee camps, the pandemic took a toll on people's finances and mental health, while gender and sexual-based violence increased. School closures, just one example of how already precarious existences became even harder.
We have had increase in the number of teenage pregnancy cases in the village. That is so common since schools have closed down. Children are not going to school, children are idle and they're moving around doing nothing.
And it's children who remain of major concern when it comes to dealing with the world's displaced. Not only are they more vulnerable, but they also make up a disproportionate amount of those. They constitute 30% of the world's population, but 42% of those who are displaced. Since 2018, 1 million babies have started life as refugees. At the Bidi Bidi camp in Uganda.
Hi, I'm called Harriet. I'm 17 years old.
These South Sudanese teenagers, some separated from their parents, documented a day in their lives for SBS World News. Speaking of struggles,
you need to buy for yourself a clothes, but there's no way you can get money. You want to buy for yourself a food, but no way.
But also their dreams.
I want to become a teacher. When I grow, I want to help my parents, I want to help my elders, and I want to help the people.
These children and those entrusted to protect them, holding on to glimmers of hope, like the fact that 3.5 million displaced people were safely able to return home last year. Although far fewer, less than 35,000, were resettled in new countries, the lowest number in 2 decades. Omar Dehan, SBS World News.